Here.
Chair Trivett.
Here.
Vice Chair Stevens.
Here.
Chair Fuller.
Here.
Artifacts.
Here. So we do have some minutes on the agenda, but we just posted them today, and so out of deference to the authority board, we'll postpone approval of those until next meeting, but I did want to make sure that we had some minutes on the agenda, and hopefully next month we'll have even more, so we're trying to get caught up on those. If that's okay, we'll skip over that one. Any objections? All right, great. Board member announcements. Anybody got anything to share? All right, our first report is the finance report. Ms. Dameron.
Good afternoon. As of the end of October, we finished with a fund balance of $59.1 million, of which almost $46 million is the result of our bonds for the construction project. Since September, we decreased our fund balance $8.8 million. The majority of that is related to CIP cost. We did have about $216,000 in operating expenditures, offset by $271,000 in interest earnings. That concludes my remarks. I'll be happy to answer questions if you have any.
Any questions of Ms. Dameron?
My only question, the $45 million in bond proceeds, does that mean we've paid out? Is that why you don't have more? We sold 60-some million?
Right, and we've paid out the balance.
difference.
They've been moving pretty fast, especially with some of the steel coming in.
Sure.
And
Oh, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right, we'll move on to the operator's report.
How we doing, everybody? Perfect. So our agenda today, we're going to go over marketing and outreach. We're going to talk a little bit about programming events and kind of where we're moving from a bookings perspective. There's some operational updates that we've been able to achieve in the last month. We're going to talk about some of the sponsorship and partner opportunities, and then finalize some details on the FF&E report. One thing that we wanted to do is ensure that there was alignment on what the sales cycle is and kind of what we view it, right? So for tournaments and events, we're looking to book 12 to 18 months out, which we're just slightly ahead of, and that's really great news. And then from a local programming perspective, we develop that about 6 months in advance, and then we sell that seasonally 3 months in advance. And so we've aligned our marketing plan for the next phase of our approach to align with those selling cycles for the different key revenue segments of the complex. In addition to that, we've had regular meetings with our partners at Visit Williamsburg to talk about our trade shows and industry conferences. In 2024, we already visited the Teams Conference, which is a National Events Rights Holders Conference. And then in 2025, we'd outline Sports ETA, Teams, Connect, which are all Events Rights Holders Conferences, and then the National Association of Basketball Coaches and American Volleyball Coaches Association. And we've been in deep discussion on how to better leverage both organizations to get the most maximization of our participation at those events. We continue to meet with Visit Williamsburg on a regular basis, along with the Hotel Motel Association, and then Colonial Williamsburg is working closely with us in courting sales opportunities and introducing them to the broader market as we leverage the asset there. On that note, we've got some really great news from a sales perspective. We have 11 active leads. We had 20 new leads come in inside of the last period, and we have 13 committed dates. All of those committed dates are under LOI, and then the sales pacing is currently aligned with our timeline for opening the facility, and we're having more conversations with all those events rights holders on a monthly basis. In this area, before we kind of move to operational updates, we do have some feedback on, we had a meeting on October 18th to discuss the name and the overall branding of the facility. We took that feedback and have had some assessments, and on the next board meeting, we'll have our formal recommendation. There's still kind of 2 internal conversations that we're working through. But to not delay the process, we've also engaged with a number of graphic designers that work under our team's portfolio to start the process to brand a logo in a fashion that could be commensurate with the naming direction. So you should see some updates on that on the next go around. And then from the sales perspective, we've also introduced a targeted rate card, but at this time, it's going to be our recommendation to have a loose structure to what the rating fees to be. We developed a target on what we believe a weekend is worth in both peak and off-peak periods. But there's a number of different factors that go into selling a tournament event. Room nights, number of athletes, number of days in market, peak versus off-peak, how much it's going to impact the rest of the tourism inside of the space. And so we're assessing each piece of business on its own merit currently, which allows us to be flexible and negotiate and make sure that we're getting the best deal for both facility and the market, which has been beneficial, and you can see the LOIs that we've received. As we move closer to local programming, we'll have a more defined rate structure for kind of core one-off hourly rentals. But from a tournament and events perspective, we want to view it as a package rather than an individual piece of business, and we can continue to further share kind of where those targets are. From an operational update, we've begun the development of our point-of-sale platform and the booking agent for the facility. Kemper Sports' preferred vendor is Bond Sports. We've established our contract with them, and we'll begin looking into the environment of how we're going to, utilize that to both collect funds for the facility, use it as kind of our day-to-day property management tool, and then in combination with some other CRMs that we're going to partner with Visit Williamsburg on. From a facility staffing perspective, we've actively been engaged in sourcing our property level GM. We've had 21 applicants. 5 candidates have advanced to an interview with our Kemper Sports executive team, and then there's 2 more that will be moving on to a phase with our senior executive team, which we're excited about, with the anticipation of having recommendations to this board in December, and hopefully a late January placement of our general manager. And in congruence with that, we've begun the recruiting of our sales and marketing director for the property level. The goal is to dwindle that candidate pool down to a final candidate shortly after our GM is sourced and secured. They can participate in the final portion of that so that there's no delay, and then have recommendations for the board to have a conversation with those final candidates in early February. Some key action items on the FF&E list and interiors. We have 2 firms providing design and pricing for the interior of the FF&E. We're going to be meeting with Ball offices tomorrow to get their presentation and proposal. We'll then compare that and then make a recommendation once we have all of our information. We've provided our formal recommendation to the board and MEB and MPB for our AV and audio visual on what we need as operators to make sure that the facility is going to function as needed. And then a group from our team and members of this board are going to be at IAPA next week, where we're going to tour some additional feature gym and adventure sports options to narrow that down and make a final recommendation on a path with that. Those are our operational updates.
Any questions for Kemper?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the flexible, I understand what you're saying in number of nights and days and teams, and can you talk a little bit about how you see that competing with Enrico and Virginia Beach and looking at their price? Yeah,
so we did a full comp set analysis and kind of getting to that target area. We believe that we can be at the forefront of the rate setting for most events. And I say for most events, there's just certain physical assets that each facility is going to have slightly different and a better advantage. So we've come up with a target of, here's what a weekend day looks like, which is about $10,200 a weekend day, $20,000 for the full weekend. But that's going to flex based on number of room nights, amount of visitors, number of teams participating, alternative sponsorship opportunities. Another thing that we look at, especially in the early phases, there's a group of rights holders that all want the same dates. They line up with the NCAA, sanctioning. There's a core period. If events right holders are willing to sign LOIs for multiple dates that stretch into off-peak periods and then in shoulder periods, will be more favorable in rate for multiple engagements, if you will. And so we're also in the process of developing a scorecard with, the other vested interest folks in the market on, hey, how do we assess each one of these pieces of business to make sure that it's fair and viable, not only for the sports complex, for sports tourism, for local visitors to market. And then there's certain periods of the year that will be, more valuable to everybody. And then there's other periods of the year where we'll be, kind of more apt to be flexible on what we sell our space for.
So of the 13, are any of those repeats booked LOIs for multiple years?
There are. Well, it's multiple years and multiple dates is kind of the idea, right? So we want to get in the peak core of our basketball season, and then whatever we can grab on the periphery is important.
So the 13, that's just for next year, though? It's not counting the following years?
At the moment, that would be fall of '26 and '27
Okay.
for those LOIs.
So it includes both years?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So at the end of your presentation there, you mentioned some kind of conference. What was that?
It's an amusement park conference in Orlando next week that some members of the board are going to be attending, and they've got
Members?
Right. It's actually a happy coincidence. Myself, Robbie, and the city's PIO were going to the conference anyway. We have been sending a delegation to that conference a couple years now in a row because we source games and things for Parks and Recreation. We do a Community Appreciation Day, so we were going anyway, and then learned that Kemper was going to be there as well as these vendors, so it's a great opportunity for us to see all of it.
Correct. Yeah, we were going for a separate piece of business as well. We're building a bowling alley, frankly, in Las Vegas, and that was our intent for going, and they're going to be there, we're going to be there, and a couple of the vendors that presented us are going to be there, and we could live action see some stuff. So it just fortuitously worked collaboratively.
Sounds great. Hope it's productive.
Yeah, agreed.
I recommend it to everybody because, it sounds like a lot of fun, and it is a lot of fun. It's very different than the normal conferences we go to, but the first one that I went to was for economic development purposes years ago, and I was struck by, I'd never thought about it this way before, how similar it is running a theme park to a city or a county. The similarities are unbelievable. And so when you're there and you walk down the aisle and there's a guy selling police barricades and wastewater treatment facilities, it's in a lot of ways, it's better than going to ICMA or probably VACO too. I've never been to one of those, but I imagine it's because you really do have those vendors that are motivated to sell a product.
So, yeah, on the positions, is your plan to bring back a couple
Yeah,
candidates?
the idea would be to bring the top 2 or 3 to the board.
With some of the vendors, some of the prospects that we're looking at, are there any fees for tournament rights and things like that? Or are they all just going to book out? They're not looking to us to pay them any bid fees or anything?
If there would be bid fees, it would be coming somewhere through the Sports Tourism Bureau. It's nothing that we would kind of negotiate at this point from the facility, but I think that at where we are right now, any support would be for other ancillaries, not to garner the business for what we have currently.
Okay.
Is that correct, Steve?
And then we talk about room nights. I know I was just at a briefing the other day and I was talking about the amount of, even though the tournaments are drawing in teams from all over the place, there's still 40% or so that are kind of local that won't be staying in hotels and things like that for most of the tournaments. That's what they've been seeing.
It depends on the tournaments that are coming in, to be honest with you. At least some of the ones that we've been talking to in this early going stage of it, they've been coming from a little bit further away, so they're more than 60 to 80%
Okay.
are coming that are, out of market, if you will. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be some more local potential tournaments that we'll look to do, especially in the periods where the hotels are already kind of full with the natural events that are going on within the market, looking to be a little bit more local in nature for those.
Okay, thank you.
And to answer that a different way, because I wasn't sure if you were speaking in generalities or what we have booked today, we're going to want to have kind of a broader pipeline because there are going to be times of the year where national events don't make sense for the facility or they just don't travel. So that's when we do go a little bit more hyper-regional and local, and it's inside of drive time and are probably on the smaller scale. But the goal is that matches up with other elements of the local market.
Any other questions for Kemper? Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next report is construction.
afternoon. As you can see behind me, we'll go over these right after this, but I saw you guys looking at them earlier. I'll jump right into milestones. So I don't know who's been out to the site, but we have probably approximately 200,000 pounds of steel up. And that is a couple column lines of the pre-engineered manufactured building. So they started a couple days ago. So if you guys have not had a chance to go out there, you ought to run by it. The scale is pretty big. So all our PEMB steel is on site. That started delivering on the 16th, and we started erecting that about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago with columns. All of our conventional steel is showing up tomorrow, we think. They'll deliver that steel over the next week, week and a half. All our steel should be completed by the end of December, beginning of January. So I added that as a note on here. Begin slab placement mid-February in the hub space. All the conventional steel will be up by then. Because of timelines moving up and keeping in with what Drew said a couple meetings ago, we're still on schedule. And we anticipate maybe moving that slab up a little bit. So end of January, maybe beginning of February, we'll start laying all that slab in the hub space. Utility agreement and the BMP agreements are in place, signed, and the BMP agreements with the city. In November, all of our HVAC, all of our units, our RTUs, all of those will be showing up. So those were released about a year ago with the idea that they will be on site when we're ready to set. So those are some of our big milestones that are upcoming and that we had. Jumping into construction complete. So building progress, I approximated it around 18%. Building footings are done. We've completed probably 90% of the CMU foundation. We are waterproofed around the whole building. We are coming back with brick ledge and insulation currently. And then, of course, you see the pre-engineered building is being set. Site work, so the ring road is 100% around the building. They'll use that to build the building. Obviously, those cranes are pretty large, so they'll use that to build. Our site contractor is gone now, so he'll probably come back, I'm guessing, to dress up and kind of take care of little things over the next year and some change, and then we'll be back in earnest, I'm assuming January, February of 26, and he'll start jumping right back on the site work. Meetings we've had, so we do have our continued regularly scheduled OAC meetings. Those are every 2 weeks. Our last was the 7th. Our next is the 21st. That, of course, is with the owner, contractor. We have Kemper in those. Any vendors that we bring on board, we invite to those. So, our additional meetings with Kemper, we have a Teams meeting every Thursday at 9 a.m. Some of our latest subjects have been AV design, as they mentioned earlier. We're at the end of getting our AV vendor on board. We have one last meeting with them this Friday, and we're going to go over finalizing their proposal, and then we should be able to present that to HCRFA. Our King meeting is done. We have sent all those back to the general contractor, and they have moved that on to door engineering. We are in the middle of discussing all the additional signage. So obviously the signage in the building, we have some allowances there to take care of any other signage outside of what's required by code. So we're in the middle of that right now with Kemper Sports on what they're going to have or want as far as signage in the building. We're talking about wayfinding and then labeling offices, conference rooms, stuff like that. And then obviously D is the feature gym discussions are ongoing. So you guys know they're heading down there to look at some more equipment. Additional comments. So we are under contract right now with our commissioning agent. They have started the design reviews and submittal reviews for the project. So they're fully on board and we're engaged with them currently. I anticipate them coming on board to meet the general contractor probably in the next month, maybe a month and a half. We've received quotes for the CCTV and access controls. That'll be pending HRFA approval. As Kemper mentioned, we do have a meeting with Ball Office. This is our initial meeting with them. So they're going to kind of throw out their initial what they think the space should look like. I'm assuming we're going to have a round or two with some feedback with them, and then I anticipate through my conversation with them, we're looking for final pricing. I've asked them by the end of the year. So then that'll give us a couple of competing prices as far as FF&E, the vendor. And then we've talked about AV. So I understand you guys have not had a chance to see these yet. So I am open to questions. These are some interior shots of the building. These are all the materials we're using that are, some of these are in these shots, obviously. This metal panel here will be the underside of the overhangs. So where you see entrance there, this will be that material. Tile for the bathroom. Colors for the inside. Do you guys have questions or?
Is that vinyl or aluminum? That
This?
yeah,
Metal.
metal.
Obviously, the furniture isn't what we've 100% chosen yet, but they had to put something in there. So this will be the entrance in to the front desk. Obviously, this will take you up to the second floor viewing area. Just a typical bathroom. This is that hub space looking back at the main entrance in. Obviously, when you come in, these are our two feature gyms with the storefront glass. That'll wrap around from the front, from the entrance around to the front, so you'll be able to see into that front feature gym. It's obviously important whatever goes in there looks spectacular.
I think I mentioned earlier before we started the meeting that we were currently working on epoxy colors for the polished concrete flooring. One of the concerns is concrete floors crack. And if you pay, this kind of money for a building, you don't want the first impression of the public to be the cracked floors, even if they're just superficial, as they would be. So we were looking for something to treat the floor with that would hide those superficial cracks, and this seems to be our lowest cost alternative. So we've narrowed it down to these three colors. We're going to get some larger samples of these to put on display, I think, over in the municipal building and try to make a decision.
So that epoxy will just really cover it up. The cracks will still be there, but they won't be as visible?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I need to get some of that.
yeah, I mean, a perfect example of that is your garage floor.
Yep.
Everybody cleans them up, there's cracks and stuff everywhere, and they come in and epoxy that floor, and
Looks good.
yeah, if it's applied correctly, you never have to worry about that again. So a lot of the, I guess, ideas we had, there were some experimental that hadn't been used in America. In Europe, it was used a lot. We were a little afraid of that, especially with the cost of it. Obviously, terrazzo was cost prohibitive. With the epoxy flooring, the nice thing about that is zero effect on schedule. We actually, I don't think we've decided, but we've asked them as a part of this pricing. We weren't going with fiber in the concrete because we were going to put down steel and then welded wire mesh, and so some of that maybe can be pulled out because we don't have to finish the floor as nicely now when you apply this epoxy. So there are some variables in this pricing that we're getting back, but it is the most cost effective, and it actually takes care of exactly what the concern is. So we're going to have approximately 42,000 square feet of the building is going to have this epoxy. We're going to ask them to alternately give us a price for the feature gyms because we don't know what's going in there yet. We don't know how we're going to cover that floor. So We think we've thought ahead.
So the epoxy for like hard court floors, that's what we'll see when we go out to play, they go out to play basketball, they'll
Maple.
play, it'll be this color with stripe.
No, we're going to get maple flooring.
This is only for
Or-
the concrete.
So we had a,
Inside the building?
yeah, so where you see here in this hub space,
Common areas.
all
So
through
no play
here.
surfaces? Okay.
Yeah, not, so that court's going to be maple floor, and then obviously the turf that we'll be able to roll out.
Yep.
The remainder of the space, when you walk in, where the concerns around columns, anybody knows anything about construction, you can put as many control joints as you want in there, and you'll get a crack parallel to that control joint every time.
Offices and meeting rooms, for the most part, are gonna be the two carpet squares there, and then, the maple floor in the gym, which, Todd, will you get us a sample so we
Yeah.
can see what that looks like? And then, the common areas will mainly be this flooring.
Concrete.
And I do like that.
Bathrooms have a different flooring.
They do.
You can see it there, it looks more like the wood. I think it's a porcelain tile, but this will be the concrete spaces that adjoin.
Gotcha, thank you.
And I do like that, because no offense to Rick, that was when we were walking around the Virginia Beach facility, that's one of the things that stands out in a new facility, those cracks that you can't control. So I like this alternative.
This would also be on the stairs, same reason. I think one of the questions that we're wrestling with is, do we do it in the future gym space? Because obviously, if we're going to do it in the future gym space, we need to do it now. And depending upon what ends up getting selected to go in those spaces, it may cover it up. But if we ever swap that out to something else, we're going to want the floors to match probably. So my fear is not doing it would be regretted later. Any questions for construction? All right, thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Legal report?
Well, it looks like Todd stole our report that we, that we got the BMP and the utility easement signed. That was our greatest feat for since the last meeting. And so we continue just to work as needed, and Todd has been a great conduit for us with everybody.
And we have the.
Oh, and we will have later today, and it's on the agenda, the electronic participation agreement for meetings.
Any questions for legal? I just want to say thank you guys, and thanks to Todd for working so diligently on those agreements with Colonial Williamsburg. As we all know, that's not always easy, but we managed to get these two through the goalpost, so I think on to the next one. All right, now is the time, an open forum for members of the public to come forward to address the board. If you would, step to the podium, say your name and address, and keep your comments to 5 minutes. I don't see anybody coming forward, so we'll move on, and I think we've got an item for closed session, or 2 or 3.
It appears. I'd move that the board of the Historic Triangle Recreation Facilities Authority convene a closed meeting pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-3711A 29, discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including the interviews of bidders or offerors, and the discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. And it's in reference to the naming rights RFP. And pursuant to VA Code Section 2.2-37A6, discussion or consideration of the investment of public funds where competition or bargaining is involved, where if made public initially, the financial interest of the authority would be adversely affected, and it's in relation to our executive director for the authority.
I'll move.
Sutton?
Aye.
Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett? Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
All right, the board will adjourn to closed session, return to open session shortly.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Mr. Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
And I'd also like to move that each member certify that to the best of their knowledge, only the public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meetings requirement by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board.
Second.
Ms. Hutton? Aye. Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
All right, we only have one other item, and that's under new business, and it's consideration and action on a proposed updated policy on electronic participation in meetings from remote locations. I did the agenda item summary for this, and I tried my best to explain it. Basically, you all probably already know this, but the General Assembly changed the rules, and this changes our policy to match the new rules. Fair enough?
Fair enough. That's what
Right.
it does, and it makes some unique changes. One of the big things is you have to adopt this every year. And I'm not sure why or the reasons, but it's not effective unless it's adopted every year. So we need to diary this for 1 year from today or prior to this time so that we adopt it. It also allowed to have persons with a disability as defined under the Virginia Code counted for quorum purposes after you've adopted the policy. And also a person who's defined as a caregiver. And otherwise, not a lot of changes from previous.
I think what we'll do, I know there'll be a little bit of a lapse, but I think what we should do is just plan for this to be on the agenda in January when we do our organizational stuff. That way, it's just part of the plan. There'll be a little bit of lapse next year when we do it, unless we re-adopt it again, I guess, in January, we could do that.
Can we just add it to the rules, our rules of procedure and bylaws, so it's automatically?
We probably
in there?
have to adopt it by,
Well, I mean, I think you should adopt it today.
Right.
And then if
Well, we
you
might can.
And then do
revisit
it again
it,
in January.
let's do
because
that.
if you have another
Do
meeting
that.
this
We'll just do it
year,
again in January.
and
at
then
the
do
Jan-
it
at the
again in
January meeting.
January, and that would be
And then we'll
fine.
get on that rotation. Okay, good. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
Ms. Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
And a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second?
Hutton?
Aye.
Mr. Bellamy?
Aye.
Chair Trivett?
Aye.
Vice Chair Stevens?
Aye.
Mr. Fuller?
Aye.
Mr. Carnifax?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Yeah, that was my thing. Rules of procedure, I think we do that.
Or get it with that special meeting.
Yeah, I don't know.
We do
I
it
don't
every
know.
year.
I don't know if that'll work or not. I know that our attorney is making us actually adopt it.